We are now starting in 1 minute.
We can see you.
Fantastic. We can see you also now. We have you all on our screen. We have the agenda that Olivier so kindly shared with our remote participation team. We have the remote participants on screen. We are only missing Olivier, who is arriving. Finally. We were looking forward to your arrival, Olivier. So we can start. Do you want to kick the dance?
Just give me 1 minute. I just need to do one small thing.
So, do you want me to start?
Please,
Yes. Fantastic. So let me just start to introduce the panelists and introduce a little bit of the team, and then I will give the floor to my friend and co-moderator Olivier Crépin-Leblanc. So our panelists of today, you can already see them on the screen. The remote panelists, and here with us inside panelists, we will start with Renata Miele, who is advisor at the Ministry of Science and Technology of Brazil, and also the chairwoman of the CGI, the Comité Gestor da Internet, the Brazilian Internet Steering Committee. Then we will have Sandrine Hersey, who leads the ARCEP, the French regulators unit on internet openness. Then we will have Sandra Mahanan. Is Sandra with us or not?
Yeah, she is.
Yes. So that work for the Unicorn group and from Omefe Technologies. Then we will have Mr. Windsurf that needs a few introductions. He is an internet pioneer and also chief internet evangelist, if I'm not mistaken, also vice president of Google. And then we will have Ik Chan, pardon my Mandarin, who is professor at the University of Beijing and also leads work of the PNAE, the Policy Network on AI. And last but not least, we should have our friend Alejandro Pisanti somewhere. Sorry, there is also Wanda Munoz. Sorry. So do we have Alejandro Pisanti online? I don't see him.
Yes, he's online. I don't know whether his video has been enabled.
Is online, but he's not visible yet, but we hope he will soon. And then we will have also Wanda Munoz, she's already online, of course. And then last but not least, Anita Gurmunti from IT for Change. All right. Now let me just introduce a little bit of the topic and why also we have combined these two sessions of the dynamic coalition on core internet values and on net neutrality and internet openness, because we had very similar proposals for this year's IGF sessions to bring together individuals that have been working for in some cases decades on core internet values and at least 1 decade on internet openness, net neutrality, and similar issues to discuss which kind of lessons can be learned from internet openness and core internet values, if any, and can be transposed to the current discussions on AI governance and AI openness. We know very well that internet and AI are two different beasts, but there is a lot of things that can overlap. And to do AI, you need somehow internet connections and internet as a whole, and a lot of things that happen on the internet, especially most applications nowadays, rely on some sort of AI. So there is a deep connection between the two, but they are not exactly the same thing. And many of the core internet values or internet openness principles that we have been discussing for the past decade or so may apply or not. Some things may be more intuitive, like transparency. Transparency of internet traffic management, we have discussed this on net neutrality issues for a decade, is essential to understand to what extent the ISP is managing traffic, and is this reasonable traffic management? Is this blocking or throttling unduly some specific traffic or not? This is also essential to understand which kind of decisions are taken by this AI system we may rely upon for an enormously important part of our lives, from getting loans and credit in banks to being identified and maybe arrested by police as criminals, or being use our services with face recognition. So this kind of transparency, although different, be it in rule-based system or in a very intensive system like LLMs that relies on a lot of computational capacity and are more predictive than and probabilistic than deterministic. In both cases, we need to understand how they function, and is not something that, from a rule of law and due process perspective, we can accept to simply say, we don't know how it works. I understand that in many cases we don't know how it works, but this kind of transparency is essential for the counterpart for accountability. Accountability with users, with regulators, with society at large. And then we have a lot of debates about interoperability and permissionless innovation, which are the core of the internet functioning. But most of AI systems are not interoperable, and actually the most advanced are also developed by a very small number of large corporations, which may lead us to the kind of concentration that non-discrimination and decentralization that are at the core of the internet and at the core of net neutrality and at the core of internet openness aim at avoiding. And to conclude, also a very concrete example of how this concentration and the lack of net neutrality can even be put on steroid by AI to some extent. We have very good examples now. We have been debating zero rating and its compatibility or incompatibility with net neutrality for the past decades almost. And we know that in most of the global south, people access the internet primarily through Meta family of apps, especially WhatsApp. And the fact that now WhatsApp includes at the very top of his homepage Meta AI means that de facto most of the people in the global south, they have as an internet experience primarily WhatsApp, and will have as AI experience primarily Meta AI. Period. That is the reality of most of the people, which are sadly poor, and we only have that as an introduction to AI, and we also work to train for free that specific AI. So those are a lot of considerations we have to have in our mind to understand to what extent we can transpose internet openness principles, to what extent we can learn lessons from regulation that already exist and to some extent may have failed over the past decades in terms of internet openness, and also which kind of governance solutions we can put forward in order to shape the evolving AI governance and the hopeful, maybe, AI openness. At this point, this would be the moment where my co-moderators, Olivier, would provide his introductory remarks, but I'm seeing him intensely speaking with our remote moderation team. So as the show must go on, I think we can start with the first speaker that we have on our agenda, that, if I'm not mistaken, is Renata Mieli. I think, Olivier, do you want to give us your introductory? Sorry, Renata. Olivier arrived again, and he is going to provide his introductory remarks, and then we will pass the floor to Renata.
Yes, apologies for this. It's Olivier Crépin-Leblanc speaking, and I've been running back and forth trying to get all of our panelists, remote panelists, because we got quite a few to have camera access, be able to be recognized by us and so on. So sorry for the running in and out, but thank you for the introduction, and it's really great to have a meeting of both organizations, both dynamic coalitions together for a topic which is of such interest. I'm going to give just a quick few words about the core internet values, because I'm not quite sure that everyone in the room knows about those. I see some new faces as well, and this dynamic coalition started quite a while ago, based on the premise that the internet works networks due to a certain number of internet fundamentals that allowed the internet to thrive and to become what it is today. And those are quite basic, actually. They're all technical in nature. And so if I just look at them, the first one is the point that the internet is a global resource. It's an open medium, open to all. It's interoperable, which means that every machine around the network is able to talk to other machines. And I'm saying machines. When we started, it was every computer. But now it is, of course, you're speaking about all sorts of devices on this. It's decentralized. There's no overall central control of the internet, short of the single naming system, the DNS. Apart from this, there's so many organizations that are involved in its coordination. It's also end-to-end, so it's not application specific. You can put any type of application at the end and make it work with something at the other end. So the actual the features reside in the end nodes and not with a centralized control of a network, and that makes it user-centric. End users have the choice of what services they want to access, how they want to access them, and these days, of course, using mobile devices, they're able to upload into or download into their mobile devices any type of application that they want to run, and they don't really think about the internet running behind the scenes. And of course, the most important thing, it's robust and reliable. It's to think that there are so many people now on a network which started with only a few thousand people, and then a few 100,000, and then a million, and then a few million, and some people back in the day thinking this is going to collapse. Well, it's still working, and it's still doing very well and very reliable, considering the number of people and the amount of the number of people that are trying to break it, the amount of malware and everything else that is on this. So it's pretty robust, pretty reliable. A few years ago, we also added another core value, which was that of safety. The right to be safe was one of the things that we felt was important to add as a core value. In other words, being able to allow for cyber measures to make sure the network itself doesn't collapse, and all sorts of ways to not content control as such, but to make sure that you are safe when you use the internet, and you're not going to be completely overblown by the amount of malware and everything that's out there. And that's something which I think we're quite successful in doing. All the antivirus software, all of the devices, all of the things that we now have on the net to make it work. These are very open values, and of course they're open for people to adopt. And of course, we have seen erosion of these over the past years. The openness of the network has been put to test on many occasions. There's also been, certainly as far as network neutrality is concerned, some traffic shaping and some things affecting the internet. But on the whole, it's still global, it's still interoperable, it's still got the basic values that we've just spoken about now. And whilst we are seeing an erosion, we're also seeing that it's quite well understood by players out there. So, and we're looking at various different levels. So the telecommunication companies, governments, the operators, the content providers, and so on, that we have this equilibrium, if you want. I can't say a sweet spot because it keeps on moving forward, but this equilibrium today, and we hope that we will be able to continue having this equilibrium tomorrow, that will make this internet both innovative, keep the innovation, but at the same time also make it as safe as possible and as stable as possible, because that's really something that now, with a network that is so important in everyone's lives, we need to make sure we have for the future. The economic implications and societal implications to having a broken internet are too big for us not to do this. So hopefully that's a message that's been well understood. But now we have AI. AI has come up and seems to have made an absolute revolution. And, forget everything else that's happened before. We need to regulate. Or that's what some are saying. And I think, well, today's session is going to be looking at this. Do we need to regulate? Or can we learn some lessons from the core internet values and how the internet has thrived to be what it is today, and apply it to artificial intelligence? Well, let's find out.
So let's start with our first panelist, Renata Miele from the Ministry of Science and Technology. Please, Renata, the floor is yours.
Hello. Thank you, Luca. Thank you, Olivier. It is a pleasure to be here discussing this interesting approach about AI and internet. I'm very happy with this bridge that you bring to us to reflect about AI and internet and the core values that we have to have in mind when we talk about this new and pervasive technology. So thank you very much, my colleagues. I am going to bring some historical perspective and try to make this bridge between the core values that we have in Brazil to internet into AI. Well, long-term analysis of internet development shows that the internet mostly benefited from a core set of original values that drove its creation, such as openness, permissionless, innovation, interoperability, and others. The internet and its technologies historically fostered an interoperable environment guided by solid and universally accepted standards that enabled pervasiveness, shared best practices, collaboration, and collective benefit from a unique network deployed worldwide. Just as in other types of technology, the development of the internet was also based in academic collaboration networks with researchers that worked together to deploy the initial stages of the global network. Artificial intelligence has been seen as a game changer for a broad range of fields, from data science, news media to agriculture and related industries. In this sense, it's safe to start from the assumptions that AI will greatly impact society in several terms: economic, political, environmental, social, and many others. The harder challenge we have is to drive this evolution in such a way that positive impacts surpass the negative ones, with AI being used to empower people and society for a more inclusive and fair future for all. And the first step for that is to have a clear consensus on fundamental principles for AI development and governance. The Brazilian Internet Steering Committee, CGI.br, outlined a set of 10 principles for the governance and use of the Internet in Brazil. Our so-called Internet Decálogo da Internet, provides core foundations for Internet governance and is very much in line with the core Internet values proposed by the IGF's Dynamic Coalition, in a way that we believe can be leveraged to also meet expectations for the governance and development of AI systems. Principles such as standardization and interoperability are important for opening development processes, allowing for exchange and joint collaboration among various global stakeholders, strengthening research and development in the field. In the same sense, AI governance must be founded on human rights provisions, taking into account its multipurpose and cross-border applications. Principles such as innovation and democratic collaborative governance can be also considered as foundations for artificial intelligence in order to encourage the production of new technologies through multi-stakeholder governance with more transparency and inclusion through every related processes. Same goes for transparency, diversity, multilingual, and inclusion, which can be interpreted in the context of AI systems development from the perspective that these technologies should be developed using technical and ethical, safe, secure, and trustworthy standards, curbing discriminatory purposes. At the same time, the legal and regulatory environments hold particular relevance for the interpretation that the development and use of artificial intelligence systems should be based on effective laws and regulations in order to foster the collaborative nature and benefits of this technology while safeguarding basic rights. It should also be noted that adopting a principles-based approach ends up generating more general guidelines, which can lead to implementation difficulties. However, this should be balanced with the need for each country to adopt AI governance to its local realities and peculiarities, in addition to granting greater sovereignty over how this governance should take place in terms of politics, economics, and social development. As a bottom line, we could think of AI development and governance as a priority topic for a more intense South-to-South collaboration, fostering the creation and expansion of research and development, as well as open and responsible innovation networks with long-term cooperation agreements and technology transfer, in order to corroborate sovereignty and solid development frameworks for the Global South. It is important to not try and reinvent the wheel and draw upon good practices that already exists, such as the global articulations across the IGF and WISIS processes, or even more stable sets of proposed frameworks such as Net Mundial principles and guidelines that can orient the evolution of the ecosystem to be even more inclusive and results-oriented. Last but not least, existing coalitions, political groups, and others could be leveraged as platforms for collaboration within digital governance and cooperation as a whole, including in traditional multilateral spaces such as the BRICS or the 20. Brazil, for example, held the presidency of G20 in 2024 this year, and will do the same with BRICS in 2025. We believe that, in both cases, there will be good opportunities of fostering best practices in digital governance collaboration across different countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Renata. Wow, that's what a start. A lot of points being made here. I'll ask that we all try and stick to our 5 minutes, and because otherwise we'll run over. We could speak for hours on these topics. But next is Anita Gurumurthy, IT for Change, and Abdelkader is. Are they ready?
Yes,
Anita?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
She's there, and she works. She can speak. Yes. Perfect. Go ahead, Anita.
Fantastic. We can hear you. Yes.
You can hear me, I hope. Yeah, all right. So thank you very much. I just heard that from Renata, and also note this wonderful point that Mr. Windsurf has made, that the internet is used to access AI applications, but operationally AI systems don't need the internet to function. I mean, I think we are making reference to the fact that in many ways, algorithms predated the internet or the internet-based revolution. However, the fact of the matter is, just like the intimate relationship between time and space, or space and time, we have a relationship between the internet and contemporary AI, which Mr. Surf calls agentic AI. Allow me to be a little bit critical of openness itself, because I think when I open up my house, what I mean is everyone is welcome. But I think the ideas of the open internet and open AI do not necessarily map on to this kind of sentiment. So the term open internet is used very frequently, but it doesn't have an universally accepted definition. And that is because, as all of us know, and none of us needs an introduction about the geoeconomics of the data paradigm here, we see that the data collection has become pivotal when we talk about the internet paradigm, and it's used either to target ads in large proportions or build products. And only a handful of players with the scale to meaningfully pull this off. So the result is a series of competing walled gardens, if you will, and they, of course, don't look like the idealized internet we started with. And today's technology runs on a string, I would say, of closed networks, app stores, social networks, algorithmic feeds. And those networks have become far more powerful than the web, in large part by limiting what you can see and what you can distribute. So the basic promise of the internet revolution, the scale, the possibility is, well, I mean, I would say it's not plausible at this conjuncture. Alongside all of this, the possibilities of community and solidarity haven't died. Thank God for that, because we have the open source communities, there are open knowledge communities, and of course, all of these remain open and vulnerable, unfortunately, to capitalist cannibalization and to state authoritarianism. So that is a bit of bemoaning the state of the internet. And all of this points to an important thing, which is that instead of an economic order that could have leveraged the global internet for the global commons of a data paradigm, we now have centralized data value creation by a handful of transnational platform companies. And we could actually have had, as Benkler pointed out long ago, a different form of wealth creation. Now I come to the openness in AI, and I'm cognizant of the 5 minutes that I have. I think it's worthwhile to look at Irene Soleiman's analysis of AI labeled open. What is open AI? We're actually talking about a long gradient, right? And everything is open. You can talk about open as if, it's one thing, but you could actually have something with very minimal transparency and reusability attributes. So that could also be open, and therefore open is not necessarily open to scrutiny. And the critiques that even other scholars like Meredith Whittaker, mount against this paradigm is that we don't necessarily democratize or extend access when you talk about openness. And openness doesn't necessarily lower costs for large AI systems at scale. Openness doesn't necessarily contribute to scrutability, and it often allows for systemic exploitation of creators' labor. So where do we go from here? It's very sobering that GPT-4, for instance, when it was published by OpenAI, they explicitly declined to release details about its architecture, including model size, hardware, training, compute, dataset construction, and training methods. So here we are. What we need to do is restore ideas of transparency, reusability, extensibility, and the idea of access to training data in its politicized form. If we don't do this, then we will be lost. And my last submission here is to be able to politicize each of these notions and make them part of ex ante public participation. We need to turn to environmental law and look at the Aarhus Convention, for instance. We need a societal and collective rights approach to openness, whether it's the open internet or open AI. And collective rights, societal rights that do not preclude individual rights or liability for harms cost to individuals. I'm not precluding that, but we still need to understand what will benefit society and what will harm society. So we are looking really at a societal framework for rights, which is supraliberal, which doesn't just always come back to my product caused you harm, but really looking at the ethics and values of societies, of sovereignty of the people, as a collective. And here I think we should understand that there are 3 cornerstones in substantive equality: the right to dignity and freedom from misrecognition, the right to meaningful participation in the AI paradigm, not just in a model, and the right to effective inclusion and the gains of AI innovation, which is for all countries and not just a couple. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anita, for this reality shock and for remembering us that actually behind the label of openness or open, one has to look at the substance of things. And the very good example of OpenAI, whose practice and architecture is really antithetic to openness, despite having open in its own name, is something that allows us to think about the fact that if we want to have market players, very large one including, and multi-billion corporations stick to their promises, maybe some type of regulation is actually essential. And here is very good to then pass the floor to Sandrine Elmiersi, because the RCEP has been very vocal and leading AI openness over the past years of implementation since 2015 of the open internet regulation in Europe. So it's very good to, based on the experience you had over the past decade, understand how, which kind of mistakes might have been done, which kind of limits may exist, and which kind of lessons we can learn to better shape openness of AI. Please, Sandrine, the floor is yours.
Thank you. First of all, let me thank the organizers of this session for this important conversation on how to incorporate Internet fundamental values in the development of AI. So I will focus this introduction on generative AI impact on the concept of internet openness. So as we know, generative AI is a versatile innovation with vast potential across many sectors and more broadly for the economy and society. These technologies also raise several legal, societal, and technical issues that are progressively being tackled. But we can see that policymakers, notably at EU level, at European Union level, have primarily focused their action and initiatives on the risks of these systems in terms of security and data protection as seen in the EU AI Act. But the impact of these technologies on internet openness and the potential restrictions this application could bring on users' capacity to access, share, and configure the content they do have access through the internet have only started to become a topic of attention in the public debate now. And yet, generative AI applications are becoming new intermediary layer between users and internet content, increasingly unavoidable. For example, a study published by Gartner this year predicts that search engine traffic could decline by 25% by 2026 due to the rise of AI chatbots. And aside from these conversation tools, generative AI applications and generative AI systems are increasingly being adopted by traditional digital services providers, including through well-established platforms like search engines, social media, and connected devices. From this perspective, we can say that generative AI could soon become an integral part of most users' digital activities, potentially serving as a primary gateway for accessing content and information online. So thanks to their user-friendly interfaces, generative AI tools open up new possibilities to a wider range of users. With generative AI, it has never been easier to create text, images, or even code. However, we must also consider the challenges and risks in terms of internet openness and users' empowerment. So at RCEP, we have for a long time emphasized that internet services providers, the main focus of EU open internet regulation, are not the only players that may negatively impact internet openness, understood as a right for end users and users in general to access and share freely the content of their choice on the internet. In 2018, we published a report highlighting that complementary to net neutrality obligations, the impact of search engines, operating systems, and other structuring platforms on devices and internet openness should be tackled with appropriate regulatory replies. So at EU level, the Digital Markets Act, adopted in 2022, has introduced new tools for promoting non-discrimination, transparency, and interoperability measures addressing some of the problems raised by gatekeepers. But for us now, it is the time to assess the impact of generative AI on internet openness and users' empowerment. This is why we have started to work on the issue and already sent first observations to the European Commission from our experience on net neutrality. And we can already see effects of generative AI application on how users access and share content online. Just some examples, the transition from search engines to response engines is not a neutral evolution and could restrict the user experience, as the interface of generative AI tools offers the users little control and agency over the content they access to, providing an ad hoc single response with often lack of transparency, no clear sources, and no ability for users to adjust the setting. We must also take into account the inherent technical limitations of AI, including biases, lack of explicability, and risk of hallucinations that are now becoming part of the digital landscape. And generative AI development also brings fundamental changes to content creation, which could impact how information is shared and the diversity and richness of content available online. Because as generative AI tools become primary gateways for content access, AI providers could also capture the essential part of the economic and symbolic value from content dissemination, which could threaten the capacity and willingness of traditional content providers such as media or digital commons to produce and share original content to the benefit of the economy and society. Why these developments are concerning, at ARCEP we are convinced, as other person around the table today, that we can create the conditions necessary to apply the principles of open internet to artificial intelligence in terms of transparency, users empowerment, and open innovation. For information, we will publish next year a set of recommendations in that perspective and are looking for partners to work towards this task. And to conclude, a final word to say that we believe that we have the collective responsibility to shape the future of artificial intelligence governance in a way that secures its development as a common good. This means notably the adoption of high standards in terms of openness, but also pro-innovation, sustainability, and safety. So thank you again for the opportunity to be here, and I look forward to the discussion ahead.
Thank you very much, Sandrine, and thank you for sharing the perspective of a regulator. We now have a perspective from a business community, and that's Sandra, data scientist analyst at Unicorn Group of Companies. Sandrine, you should be able to unmute and take over. Sandra?
We cannot hear Sandra. Can we check why we cannot hear Sandra? Sandra, can you try to speak again?
No, we can't. We're not hearing Sandra online either.
We're not hearing her online, so...
Should we maybe... Sandra, can you do a last attempt? Yes, can you try to speak?
Yeah, there's a problem with her mic.
Yes, there is a problem with... while we try to solve this in the interest of time, let's move ahead to the next speaker, and then we will have Sandra maybe later. Windsurf, please, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much for asking me to join you today. This is a very, very interesting topic. I will say that AI and internet are not the same thing. And I think that the standardization which has made the internet so useful may not be applicable to artificial intelligence, at least not yet. What you see is extremely complex and large models that operate very differently from each other. And the real intellectual property is a combination of the training material and the architecture and weights of each of the models that are being generated. And those are being treated largely as proprietary. So open access to an AI system is not the same as access to its insides and its training material and its detailed weights and structure. So we should be a little careful not to try to equate the things that make the internet useful and try to force them onto artificial intelligence implementations. I don't think we're at a place where standardization is our friend yet. The one place where standardization might help a lot for generative AI and agentic AI would be standard ways, semantic ways of interacting between these models. Humans have enough trouble with speaking to each other in language, which turns out to be ambiguous. I do worry about agents using natural language as a way of communicating and running into the same problem that humans have, which is ambiguity and confusion and possibly bad outcomes. Generally speaking, if we're going to ask ourselves whether we should regulate AI in some way, I would suggest, at least in the early days, that we look at applications and the risks that they pose for the users. And so the focus of attention should be on safety and for those who are providing AI applications to show that they have protected the users from potential hazard. I will also, I feel strongly that there is a subtle risk in our use of generative AI. Those of you who know how these things work know that the AI, the large language models, essentially compress large quantities of text into a complex statistical model. The consequence of that is that some details often get lost. And so we have a subtle risk in our use of large language models where we may lose specific details, even though the generative output looks extremely convincing and persuasive because of the way it's produced. So I wonder whether we will end up with sort of blurry details as a result of filtering our access to knowledge through these large language models, and I would worry about that. I guess the last thing I would say is that accountability is as important in the AI world as I think it is in the internet world. We need to hold parties accountable for potentially hazardous behavior. The same is true for parties offering AI-based applications. They should be accountable for any risks that these systems pose. My guess also is that we should introduce into the training material better provenance so that we know where the material came from. This would be beneficial for websites in general, knowing where the content came from so that we can assess its utility and accuracy. So I'll stop there and thank you for your opportunity to intervene.
Very much, Vint. Since we are a bit pressed for time, we'll go straight over to Yik-Chan Shin. And while we're working out with Sandra how to get her mic working. So Yik-Chan, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you for inviting me. So I'm speaking from the PNI perspective because as you may know that we have a policy at IGF, we have an intersection called the policy level on artificial intelligence. So we did a report on the interoperability and the liability and the sustainability and the label issues. So yeah, first of all, I think I do agree with Wing Chef in terms of the infrastructure of AI. Actually, it's quite different from the internet because actually AI system and the users are supported and connected via the internet, but they're quite different because AI, including algorithm, data, and the computing power, technically, none of them must be unified or standardized. I mean, technically, okay? And then also, according to our past experience, the interoperability of AI is extremely complex issue. So we have been working on the topic for 2 years, last 2 years, but it is really extremely difficult issues. So before I go into detail about the interoperability, I think there's two principles worth paying special attention. Because when I look at the question, you talk about permissive innovation versus precautionary principle. So when we talk about the open internet, so basically we talk about permissive innovations. And I'm not sure whether this principle should be applied to the AI regulation, because AI is extremely complex, and there's some features, unique features of AI, for example, complexity and unpredictable, and also is kind of autonomous behave. So all these particular features make the AI quite harmful, if there's a risk. So whether we should allow this permissive innovation approach, which is applied to the open internet, because we know the history of internet is in the beginning is self-governed. But should we allow this apply to the AI system? I think we should be very cautious about that. Okay, but on the other hand, we do see there's some overlapping principle between the AI regulation, internet regulation, for example. So I think those values should be applicable to both systems. For example, like a human-centered system, okay, both AI and internet, inclusiveness, universality, transparency, accountability, robotics, and the safety and naturalities and capacity building. So all these values actually applicable to both systems. So in terms of the interoperability, which is my area, so I would like to say something particularly focused on interoperability. So first of all, what is interoperability? Interoperability, basically, we're talking about the capacity of the AI system, in terms of machine, they can talk to each other, communicate with each other smoothly. So including not only machine, but also the regulatory policy, so they can communicate and work together smoothly. But this doesn't mean we has to, the regulation or the standard has to be harmonized, because we can have a different mechanism to accommodate interoperability. For example, we can have a compatibility mechanisms to accommodate the interoperabilities. So therefore, first of all, I think interoperability are crucial for the openness of the internet and AI system. But AI system can be diverged as well as convergent, as I just explained before, because the system is quite different. It's not necessarily to be unified. So therefore, first of all, we need to figure out what area of AI system or even AI regulations or governance has to be interoperable. What areas can be allowed divergent, and respect the regional diversity. So from the PNI's perspective, so in our report, we identified several areas which could be, addressed at the global level, which need have the interoperable framework. For example, like the risk. The AI models risk categorization and evaluation, because we see there's a different approach to categorize the AI risk and evaluate. So EU have a EU approach, and China has Chinese approach. So even American the US just released their global standardization framework and mechanisms. So we need to have a kind of the interoperable framework in terms of AI risk categorization and evaluation. And the second is about liability. So we have a huge debate just over there about the liability of AI system, and who should take responsibility, and what kind of responsibility is criminal or civil. So this is, we haven't have a global framework, even national framework in terms of, because there's still debate at the EU level at the national level. So liability of the AI model is other area which could be addressed at the global level. The third one, I think Winshift just mentioned about the training data set. So all these issues can be addressed at the global level. And so the other things, the last I want to mention is about how do we balance the regional diversity and the harmonization needs. So we need to respect the regional diversity in AI governments, but at the same time can establish compatibility mechanisms to reconcile the divergence in the regulations. So there's different mechanism we can use, but it's the context dependent and so case by case. I think is my time up? So last things that I want to say is about the area we had to improve is a weak regime capacity of international institution in coordinate the alliance. So that's a kind of concept we call the weak regime capacity of the international institutes, which means, we have a lot of the international institutes like ITU, IEEE, and the UN. But how can we...
Can I ask you just to wrap up in 1 minute?
Okay.
Because so that the others also have time to speak. Thank you.
Yeah, so the last thing is that we need to have some kind of the, global institution which can coordinate different initiatives at the national level, regional level, and the international level in terms of the openness of the AI and the openness of the internet. So the GDC have not provided a concrete solution in terms of how to strengthen the multi-stakeholder in the AI governance, but leave to the WIS 20 to decide. So I think we should address this in the WIS 20 debate. I think I stop there. Thank you.
Fantastic. Let's try to see if now Sandra can be audible. Sandra, can you try to speak so that we can check? We are not hearing you. Can you try again?
How about now?
Yes, now yes. Perfect. Yes, it was the
I can hear
mic.
you.
Keep the mic close to your mouth, please. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry for the whole mix-up, and once again, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I'll try to be very short.
If you can keep the mic very close to your mouth, because literally we can hear very well when it's close to your mouth and not at all when it is 5 centimeters from your mouth. Thank you very much. We cannot hear you, Sandra. I'm sorry. Sandra, unfortunately, we keep on not being. I think it's a mic problem. So if you have another microphone where you are, I suggest you try to change it while we go to the next speaker, Alejandro Pisanti, because we are not able to hear you in this moment, Sandra. So Alejandro Pisanti, very old friend. Not because he is old at all, but because we know each other since a lot of years. So please, Alejandro, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me well?
Yes, very well.
Thank you. Thank you, Luca and Olivier, for the yeoman's work you did to put this session together, and to all members of the Dynamic Coalition for the exchange of ideas. I salute also friends I see on screen. I think I see Martin Botterman. I think I see Desiree Misolevich and Harald Alvestrand, probably getting that right. So briefly, because I'm going to be mostly responding as well as putting forward what I had prepared. The Dynamic Coalition was created to try to follow on these core values, which if you take them away, you don't have the internet anymore. If you take away openness, for example, you have an internet. If you take away interoperability, you have a single vendor network, and so forth. And that's what we are trying to now extend to or let's say to challenge how much we can extend it to AI. We have to be very careful what we call AI. In people's mind are the generative AI systems that start from text and can give you either more text in a conversational interface, or can give you images, video, and audio. But artificial intelligence is a lot more things. It's molecular modeling, it's weather forecasting, it's every use of artificial intelligence that we use for basically three purposes, which is finding patterns in otherwise apparently chaotic information, finding exceptions to information that appears to be completely patterned, and extrapolating from this. And we know that extrapolating from algebra, extrapolating from things that you only calibrate for interpolation is always going to be risky. So that's, our basic explanation and concern for hallucinations in LLM systems. We have, second, one of the lessons we've learned for many years from this dynamic coalition is to separate the effects of the human and the technology, to separate the effects of human agency, human intention. Cybercrime doesn't happen and wasn't invented by the internet. It happens because people want to take your money or want to hurt you in some ways. And now use the internet as they previously used fax, post, or just try to cheat you face to face. Same for many other undesirable conducts. So we have to separate what people are wanting to do and how technology modifies it, for example, by amplifying it, by enabling anonymity, by crossing borders, and so forth. And same for AI. It's not AI that is doing misinformation. We have had misinformation, I think, since at least the Babylonians, and probably even before we had written language. But now we have very subtle and easy to apply ways to apply misinformation at a large scale. But we still have to look at the source and the intention of the people who are creating and purveying this misinformation, and not try to regulate the technology instead of regulating the behavior or educating the users to avoid them falling for misinformation. Second large point here, third large point here, is not trying to regulate artificial intelligence in general, in toto, but being sure that you are not, by trying to regulate what you don't like about LLMs doing misinformation, you don't kill your country's ability to join molecular modeling revolution for pharmaceutics, for example. There's a recent paper by Akash Kapoor, which I think is very valuable for this session, which speaks of leaving behind the concept of digital sovereignty and replacing it with digital agency. Luca and I were in a meeting 2 weeks ago in New America in DC, where this concept was put forward, and it's a very powerful one, because what I extract from it is, instead of trying to be sovereign by closing borders and putting tons of rules, which are basically copied from rules from the countries which actually developed the technology, and based on the fears, it's trying to be powerful, even if you have to sacrifice some sovereignty, in the sense that you have to collaborate with other countries, you have to collaborate with another academic institution and so forth, which, by the way, has always been the way of developing technology and academic research. There's a recent French paper, it came to my attention only yesterday, which speaks about de-demonizing. Stop demonizing artificial intelligence without, of course, becoming confident or overconfident, but try to regulate and to promote AI. If your country is looking, if your legislators are looking to regulate AI and are not putting a lot of money into research and development and into, let's say, like Denmark or Japan have done recently, or Italy, putting together a major computing facility for everybody to use to develop AI, they are lying to you. They are cheating you, because they are actually closing the door to the effects of innovation and condemning you to actually getting this only from outside the country in the end, in subtle and uncontrolled ways. How do we bring multi-stakeholder governance, which is another lesson from our dynamic coalition, to artificial intelligence? We have to find a way maybe to scare the companies with the fear of harder regulation, to come together with other stakeholders like academia, like the users, like rights holding organizations and so forth, as we did with, for example, the domain name market with ICANN 25 years ago. It's not doing an ICANN again necessarily, but it's extracting the lessons of how you bring these very diverse stakeholders together to a kind of core regulation designed for the type of system and risks that are present in reality, and not only the imaginary ones. There has also been some talk about open sourcing, which is very valuable. The risks have already been mentioned, and one risk that has not been mentioned that we learn from this history of open source software is derelicts. Software that is abandoned, systems that are abandoned, that are not maintained anymore, which are very risky because defects can creep in and never be fixed. And then these things become part of the infrastructure of the internet. We already have seen some major security events, for example, happening from unmaintained open source software, which was at the core of different systems. So the challenge here will be to avoid the delusion of one world government. We don't need a GDC. We don't need a UN artificial intelligence agency. We need to look more at a federated approach. And I think that this will be more approachable, more available. There's a better path to it. If we do, as for example, the UK has been doing, go by the verticals, go by the sector-specific type of regulation, which we already have, use all the tools society already has, like liability for commercial products, liability for public officials who purchase systems which work badly. It's as bad to purchase a system that does biased or discriminatory assignment of funds in a social security system, as it's bad to purchase cars that end up killing people in crashes because you don't have airbags. And that would be it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Alejandro. I was going to remind you to wrap up, but you already did it yourself. Fantastic. So let's try to see if now Sandro has a new mic that can work. Let's try to see, give a last shot at Sandra's presentation. Sandra, can you hear us?
Yes, can
we can hear you.
Now?
We can hear you very well. Very well.
Fine.
Excellent. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm so sorry about the mix-up with my mic and all. I'm going to try to keep this very short. So I would want to come in from the angle of the business angle, so to speak. So I work with Unicorn Group of Companies, and it's an AI and robotics company. So I read one time that AI often reflects the biases of its creators, right? So we all know that AI response quality is a very huge concern. It's a huge concern because we have cultural biases, religious biases. Recently, I was in a religious gathering where religious leaders were trying to discuss the adoption of AI and the concerning responses that AI gives, the erroneous responses and all of that. And we all know that AI responses are heavily dependent on the data quality fed into the model, right? And so the acquisition of such data is usually not cheap. It's very expensive. We talk about computing power, we talk about acquisition of data. These are very expensive processes. So my take would be to regulate AI, not really from the user angle, but from the openness should come from the aspect of the developer, the development angle, where we talk about the data quality, data privacy, security, data sharing protocols, operating in the market as an entity, interoperability, and and all of that. Yeah, that would be my take on it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Sandra, for your perspective and for being so fast. Do we want to have our last speaker, last but not least, of course?
I think we'll have Wanda Munoz, who is a member of the Feminist AI Research Network in UNESCO's Women into Ethical AI platform. So over to you, Wanda.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. Thanks to the organizers for having me, and thanks Alejandro for recommending me to be here. I would like to take a somewhat different perspective from what has been shared so far, because what I like to put on the table today is my perspective as someone who comes from policymaking and from human rights implementation. So my contributions come from this perspective, and I will also build on the results of a report from the Global Partnership on AI, called Towards Substantive Equality in AI that I invite you all to review, and for which we counted with the amazing leadership of Anita. So I take the opportunity to thank her again for her contributions and to say that I fully agree with her intervention. So I will start by sharing a few thoughts on the issue of values itself, and then I will move to human rights. First, I like to share that I think the core values of internet governance have been very useful to have a common understanding of the internet that we want and that serves the majority. But arriving to the discussion when these values were already adopted and implemented for a while, I want to put it on the table that maybe we could benefit from analyzing these values from a gender and diversity perspective. And I think there's already a wealth of research from feminist AI scholarship in this regard. For instance, just to mention an example of the 6 core principles of feminist data visualization. I don't know if you are familiar with it, but I invite you to look for them, which propose values such as rethinking binaries, embracing pluralism, examining power, and aspiring to empowerment. And these are quite different from the internet core set of values today, but also complementary. And I think what I like from this other set of values is that they question social constructs, power, and distribution of resources. And these issues to me are inextricably linked both to internet and to AI governance, but still they are often left out of mainstream discussions. So that being said, I'll move to human rights. And here what I like to say first is that I like to give you a couple of ideas of how a few of us insist that human rights should be at the front and center of any discussion on AI governance, at least on the same standing as ethics, principles, and values. And I think maybe for some of you see it differently, but human rights are not just words. Human rights are actions, policies, budgets, indicators, and accountability mechanisms, as which were already mentioned by Renata and Anita before. So in the context of artificial intelligence, human rights allow us to reframe the discussion on AI in different terms and to ask different questions. So let me give you 3 examples. Instead of saying that we must mitigate the risk of AI, what we would say from a human right perspective is that when AI harms occurs, it systematically results in violations of human rights that disproportionately affect women, racialized persons, indigenous groups, and migrants, among others. And I'm sure you know of the many dozens or more documented examples of this that have affected the right to employment, to health insurance, to social services, and many others, which you can find, for instance, in the OECD AI Incidents Monitor. Another example, instead of saying that in AI governance we should balance risk and innovation, if we acknowledge that the benefits of innovation generally benefit a privileged few and the brunt of the harm is primarily for those already marginalized, from a human rights perspective, we would talk about the need for AI regulation to ensure accountability, remedy, and reparation when violations of human rights results from the use of AI. And I want to tell you that of this research we carried out for GPay, where we consulted more than 200 people from all walks of life, backgrounds in 5 continents. This is possibly the #1 demand that was documented in the report. And I also want to say I appreciated Jixian's perspective on the need for international norms, specifically regarding liability and accountability. And a third example is regarding non-discrimination. That I think generally speaking, people understand non-discrimination as saying, I don't go out and say slurs to people in the street, right? So I don't discriminate. But from a human rights perspective, this is far from enough. What non-discrimination means is that you must take possible actions to avoid and to redress discrimination that already systematically exists in our organizations, in our data, in our policies. And this is particularly the case in internet and on artificial intelligence. So in a human rights framework, unless we take action, we are effectively perpetuating discrimination. Similarly, we could have a discussion about what a general notion of safety means, but unless we adopt specific actions to ensure the safety in the context of the vulnerabilities of specific groups, in each specific context, we will keep excluding those who are already more marginalized. And here, Alejandro, as often, I want to respectfully disagree with you when you talk about the need not to demonize technology, because I hear this once and again, and I really don't think it's a helpful term that is often thrown at those of us who are pointing out the risks and harms of AI. So I think we are doing this from the documented impacts and from the evidence and trying to raise the alarm to at least start bringing into reality, into the reality of what AI is causing. In addition, I mean, to contrast with what we see most of the time, which is this AI hype. And of course, I think that for all the problems that the UN has, we don't need it to lead an effort on AI regulation if we want to have at least some equality in terms of negotiation. But this leads to larger issues with multilateralism that I hope we could discuss in another time. So just to conclude, I think when we speak about AI governance, what is at stake has the potential to change the core of how our societies function. So I fully agree with Anita on the need for a societal and collective rights approach in addition to a human rights one. And to me, this cannot happen without regulation. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Vanda, for bringing these really very good and intense, thought-provoking points. I think this is a very good way to open our discussion now with the floor. We have good 20 minutes to speak. Also, let me share with the floor that one of the intentions that we had when we started to design the organization of this session was to try to distill some core elements maybe that we could put into a report, a joint report for next IGF. We know very well that in 6 months before next IGF there will be very few things that we could do in terms of outcome, but a joint paper on what could be the elements for an open AI ecosystem or something like that. So if you have any ideas, if you can help us guide us, identify what could be these core elements, or if you have any other reflections on what has been said, we have 20 good minutes to discuss this. Feel free to be punchy, provocative, while of course diplomatic and respectful. Just raise your hand and our mic will be given.
And Luca, if I could add, there are sometimes some panels at IGFs where everyone agrees with each other, and I was really pleased to see various viewpoints and some panelists not agreeing with each other. So that's really good. And I by the way, if you all as panelists also have points to make about each other's interventions, and please go ahead. Now, if you're online, you can put your hand up in the Zoom, and we'll be seeing this. And of course, if you're in the room, then put your hand up, and a mic will fly in your direction or maybe be brought over to your direction. Does anyone who wishes to fire off?
Who wants to start our collective exercise?
It's a lot to digest.
Yes, I see. Are you, Desiree, are you stretching or raising your hand? Okay, let's break the silence with Desiree.
Hi, Desiree. The question, thank you all for your very rich intervention. There's a lot to take in, and although I don't know the title of the session, whether really focusing on the core principles of AI, this is a dynamic coalition working group on core principles of the internet. So I'm really glad to see the differentiation that the AI is not the internet, confirmed by some of our panelists. And then we also had heard that the AI is building this intermediary layer, like user interface between these structures. So I think it's important to see the AI as just as something being built on top of the existing infrastructure. And my concern is really that we will end up with the internet that is even fuller of deep fakes and disinformation at this current stage, and that trying to have a sustainable internet where we need to be really careful about the capacity that we have in the society in running the internet and getting bits of information through the network. Should the layers of the network, be looked separate and protected? And what I think I'm hearing, and I'd like to have a confirmation, is that AI being built on the top should really be regulated at the AI layer, and not to go deep down into the internet infrastructure as such. But then there are arguments that some networking parts will be using AI as well. And so how do we see this, regulation being played out? And what is the core principle here? Is it still net neutrality, that we're stupid about the bits that go through the network. It just raised a lot of questions in my mind.
Yeah, thank you, Desiree. We have Anita online who wants to react, and then we've also got Vince having put his hand
So
up.
let's take Anita and Vin's reactions, and then we go around the floor again.
I must apologize that I wasn't responding to the point from the floor because I wanted to come in earlier. So is that okay that I go in now?
Yes, please go ahead, and then we'll have Vint and then Renata.
Yeah, it's a minor point. It may be linked to what was just observed. I think that when you talk about the internet and the innumerable struggles in our own regulatory landscape, and I recall my organization and it's the good fight we put up for net neutrality in relation to our telecommunications authority. The way the idea of non-discrimination inheres in the network is very, very different, I think, when it comes to artificial intelligence. I think AI is primarily linked to truth conditions of a society, and you're really not necessarily prioritizing non-discrimination. I think that's somewhat of a technicalized representation of data and AI debates. And what we're actually doing is using discrimination and social cognition in a manner that you can use data for social transformation. So there is a certain slippage there very often. And in fact, in our joint work with Wanda, we actually said that we might sometimes have to do affirmative action through data. So we really have to be cautious about conflating non-discrimination on the internet with principles for responsible AI.
Thank you. Vint?
And literally just thinking on the fly here about AI as another layer, as the interface into this vast information space we call the internet. First of all, Alejandro's point that machine learning, it covers a great deal more than large language models. His mention of weather prediction, for example, it resonates with me because we recently discovered at Google that we can do a better job of predicting weather using machine learning models rather than using Navier-Stokes equations. But I think that we should be thoughtful about the role that machine learning and large language models might play. One possibility is that they filter information in a way that gives us less value. That would be terrible. But another alternative is that it helps us ask better questions of the search engines than we can compose ourselves. We have a little experience with this through the use of what's called a knowledge graph that helps expand queries into the index of the World Wide Web and then pull data back. Summarization could lose information. That's a potential hazard. But I think we should be careful not to discard the utility that these large language models might have in improving our ability to ingest, analyze, and summarize information. So this is an enormous canvas, which is mostly blank right now, and we're going to be exploring, I'm sure, for the next several decades.
Renata?
Just a point. Of course, AI and the internet are not the same thing. They are different. But in my point of view, we have some challenges that we are facing regards how to address the risks of AI, and the impacts on society are pretty much the same in terms of the need more. We need more transparency, accountability, diversity, more decentralized and democratic, not only internet, but AI. And we need to focus also in how AI are impacting the internet and how people interact with internet. Now, we are in a situation that, for example, when you do a search on Google, you don't have more a lot of links to click and interact with the content of the link about something, how to cook a cake, orange cake, for example, because the artificial intelligence brings the results and you don't need to click anymore. And in a lot of times, the results are not accuracy and have bias, and this is are impacting the internet, how we experience it. So there is not the same thing, but one impact other, and we have to have in mind that the core values we need to have to regulate the AI in this actually moment needs to be into account this transparency, this accountability, liability, and so on that we need, neutrality and other core values that we had to internet.
Yes, I think in terms of internet governance, we have these core infrastructures, which we all recognize has to be public good, even global public good. So this is no problem. So we are continually be regulate separately as a core infrastructures. So but AI system, I think, is more on the applicational level. But there's a issue I think many people already touched, especially in terms which is cybersecurity, because the AI actually put a lot of the because it caused a lot of the problem in terms of cybersecurity, because it make the internet more vulnerable, towards the cyber attacks. So that is one areas with just like my colleague said, they have a mutual impact, especially in terms of cybersecurity. In terms of the AI may help acknowledge the dangers, harms towards the internet stability. I think that is one area we have to put focus. But there's another impact. Which needs to take a long observation on the impact of the AI on the internet and the core infrastructure of the internet. Yeah.
Right, let's get to Sandra, and unless there is anyone else with an urgent comment or question, we can then wrap up. Sandra, please.
Okay.
Can you speak again? Because
Can you hear me?
yes, very well.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to quickly react to what I think 2 speakers ago, she made mention of a concern about having erroneous responses, because some way, somehow, AI just summarizes the feedback from searches, which was one of, I think I totally agree with her, which was one of the points I made earlier, that these biases are, whether we like it or not, AI is here to stay. And then these biases are really concerning. They are concerning because we would agree that there are really big wigs in the business, and they get to, I don't want to say control the narrative, but for lack of a better way of expressing it. And then the small players, no matter how accurate they are, don't get to really, I don't know, access is really low because the big wigs have occupied the market, which means that responses automatically, or people automatically go there. And then what happens when the decentralization is not really happening? When it's not really decentralized, when people are not really getting to, there's other players in the industry are not really getting to people are not really having access to those other players. And that is why it is really important, I think, that regulation should really come heavy on the side of the development or the developers or the models themselves.
I think that now, as we will be kicked out of the room in 2 minutes, it's time to wrap up and to thank the participants for their very thought-provoking comments and presentations. I think we have illustrated very well the complexity of this issue and also the interest of then trying to keep on having this very productive joint venture for next IGF to present the result of what could be a very brief report on the elements that can enable an open AI environment, as it was suggested also in the chat during the session. We will make our best effort to distill the knowledge shared over the past hour and a half into.
I think the mics are giving up on us.
Yes.
Try this one.
Yeah. No, it's a sign that we have to wrap up. And so thank you very much, everyone, and we will do our best effort to consolidate everything we have learned today into this report. Thank you very much.
And I should just add, if anybody is interested in joining both the coalition, dynamic coalition of network neutrality and the one on core internet values, then come to talk to us and we'll take your email address and name, and we'll be very happy to have you on. And thanks again to all of our panelists, and really great job. So thank you so much.
Thank you again, and congratulations for the session.
Thank you.